Okay, so this is going to be the quiz correction format for the rational unit quiz. And so I want you to be able to identify what you put as your answers for 1 through 7 on the multiple choice, and then we'll go over that. All right, so let's take a look first at number 1. Um, we can see that on number 1, let me go down here. Oops, here we go. It says to solve the rational inequality. So the first step would be to move this guy over to the other side, which means we have less than or equal to 0. And so we want to be able to get common denominators and get to our finalized rational function here. Then we need to be able to identify the zeros and also where the function is undefined so that we can create our number line. And so remember that the idea is to put little x's over your undefined values so that way you don't include them um, because they're undefined at those spots and they can never have brackets. So we should have gotten that the 0 is -7/3, and then we have asymptotes or holes at -3 or 3. And so let's take a look. It says, where is the function less than or equal to 0? And so that means where's the function negative? So it looks like we are negative from -infinity all the way to -3 with an open circle because it can't equal that. It's allowed to equal -7/3 because that's the 0, and it's negative on this interval, and then it's an open circle here. All right, so the only one that matches that is going to be D. So -infinity to -3, not including that -3, picks back up, includes the -7/3, and ends at +3. So our correct answer is D. Then it says, if any exist, find the coordinates of the point discontinuities of this rational function. So what we would need to do is factor the denominator and identify any common factors top and bottom. So 2x plus 1 and 2x plus 1, that's a common factor. So the x value of the whole is going to be at -1/2. And then the other common factor is x plus 3. So the x value at that whole is -3. And so then what we have to do is get rid of those and then simplify that. So we get h of x is equal to x minus 2. And then we just evaluate the function. So we're going to plug in -1/2. So -1/2 minus 2 is -2.5. And then we also have, we're evaluating at -3. So we have -3 minus 2 is -5. So we end up with -5/2 here and then -5. So 1 is a whole and also 3 as a whole. So the correct answer choice is E. Number 3 says, which of the following is a non-canceling factor in the denominator? If it's non-canceling factor in the denominator, that's going to be your vertical asymptote. Your vertical asymptote is x equals -4, but in factored form, it's x plus 4. So the answer is going to be B. Number 4, if one exists, is the equation what is the equation of the slant asymptote? So this is right here, my synthetic division process. And then I could care less about the remainder. Remember, if this was x squared and then an x, we reduce it by 1 more. So my equation is just going to be y equals 2x minus 9. Number 5, it says, which of the following is the equation of the horizontal asymptote? So the first thing you need to do is rewrite it in standard form, then identify the ratio of the leading coefficients. So it's y equals -2. Now let's look at 6. We've got a table of values and it says which of the following statements is true about the function. So let's take a look at 1. The factor of x plus 2 is both in the numerator and the denominator. Well, that would indicate what x is equal to -2. So we go to -2 and we analyze the left and the right. If in order for it to be both in the numerator and the denominator, it would have to be a whole. So if I look at this left side and right side, it does not approach the same y value. So we know that it's not 1. And then the graph of f of x has a vertical asymptote at x equals -2. If I take a look at that, that's a really large y value as x is approaching from the left, and a really large negative when it's approaching from the right. So that is indicative of vertical asymptote. Now let's take a look at 3. It says it has a hole at x equals -2. Well, we just established that it doesn't have a hole there. So it's going to be Roman numeral 2 only. So that's going to be B. All right, number 7, which of the following functions is graphed at the right? So the very first thing we want to do is be able to identify some of those key features. This is going to be the x-intercept. There's no hole, but there's 2 x-intercepts. We also have a vertical asymptote at 3, so this is the other factor. The thing is that you have to keep in mind is if we have a slant asymptote, we need to find the equation of that. So we know that the slope is -1/2. If we were to have this in standard form, really quickly, x times x is x squared dot 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 all over x. We know that the ratio right here needs to equal a -1/2. Well, right now it's just a positive, so this needs to be a -2 that we need to incorporate in the denominator. So we're going to multiply this by a -2. So if we take a look, I've got x minus 4 and x plus 1 and x minus 3, but I need the -2. So I'm going to exclude these guys. And then now it's between C and E. So I have x plus 1 and x minus 4. But now let's take a look and see what I should have. I should have -2x plus 6 if I were to distribute that properly. So the answer to 7 is C. All right, the free response here, this was the domain and the range. So hopefully you guys got that right. On B, this is a slightly different question. On your Google form, it had kind of like select which of the factors applied. And these are the main ones that I want to go over. So non-removable infinite, and again, we want to do the factors. We're talking about x equals 1. So the factor is x minus 1. Removable is going to be the whole. And again, that is just the factored form of x plus 1. The factor in the numerator, I do believe it tells us that f of -1/3 equals 0. So in that factor numerator only is going to be 3x plus 1. Factor in the denominator only is going to be the vertical asymptote. So that is going to be x minus 1. Same thing with here. And then a factor in both is going to coincide with the removable. So that's x plus 1. All right. And then we didn't really do C. I've kind of incorporated it in here. And then let's take a look at D. It says in standard form, what would be the equation of f of x be? Use the leading coefficients and the constant terms of the numerator and denominator. Explain why your equation is in fact the equation of the graph function. So the first thing you do is you take those factors that we've identified in the preceding questions and you multiply them out. And then we go through and we check about the leading coefficients and see if we need to make any adjustments. It says the ratio of the leading coefficients should equal -3 since y equals -3 is the horizontal asymptote. But for mine, I have 3/1. So that means that I need to add this negative in front. Okay, so I need to make sure I add that negative in terms of that equation, which means my new equation should look like this. And then it says the ratio of the constants should equal +1 since the y-intercept is 0, 1. And if I were to double check that, -1 over -1 is equal to +1.